In this video, I'm going to show you 3 essential environment assets and how to make them. These are things that can be used in many different types of environments to just repeat around the scene a ton to add a lot of detail. So it's really easy to make all 3 of these. What we're going to be making is number 1, wires, like hanging sci-fi wires. Number 2 is going to be industrial pipes. And then number 3 is going to be railings and a few bonuses with like stairs and a few different methods you maybe have not seen before. So these are things that I use in tons of different environments. They're easily repeatable and duplicatable. And you'll also learn a lot about modeling along the way. So let's just get started with making some wires, and then we'll move on to the other 2 after. Okay, so I'm just going to start with actually a Bezier curve. We're going to convert this back to a mesh in a minute, but let's start with the curve just in the modeling workspace here. So Shift A, curve. If you don't see it in the menu, just scroll up and you'll find Bezier curve at the top here. When it spawns in, it's this weird shape. So what I like to do is just go to edit mode. I'm just going to turn on screencast keys as well. Okay, with that on, I like to just go select the curve, go to edit mode, and then just go S, Y, 0 to scale it by 0 on the Y axis. And now it's just a straight line. What I'm going to do is go back to edit mode, and let's just position this into the shape of a hanging wire like this. What we can do now is actually just, with this selected, go into the curve settings over here, this green data tab, and then underneath geometry, find the bevel section right here, and turn up the depth underneath bevel. I don't know why it's called bevel here, but if you turn that up, it makes it a actual tube. I like to keep this pretty thin, like thinner than you'd think, and that just makes it look a lot cleaner, I find, in renders. Maybe a little bit more than this, but somewhere around there. And then what we can do here is actually just get this into a little bit more of like this kind of shape. And then what I might do is duplicate this thing. I'll move it just down or up slightly. And then I'm going to, in edit mode with this second one here, I'm going to just right click and then hit subdivide. And that's going to add a 3rd point. I might actually hit that one more time so that we have all these extra points here. I'm going to take the ones between, like any points that are between 2 points. So just these ones here. And I'm just going to move these down. So I'm just hitting G, Z to move it down. I'm going to take this one in the middle and actually shrink it down just by scaling it. And then I might just move that on top of this one. Now they're kind of clipping through each other. So I can just rotate that a little bit to have it not intersecting so much. And now it's kind of this hanging wire situation. And then you can actually just repeat this a bunch of times. So I might make this one a little bit thinner. Then let's duplicate it again. I'll just move this one up slightly as well. Let's go into edit mode, right click, subdivide, and then we can just take those points that are in between 2 points again, and I'll just move those down like this. And then on these hanging parts, just scale it in, rotate it slightly, and just kind of make it fit a little bit nicer there. And I'll just go and do that on this point as well. You want to scale it down so it looks like more just tight where it's overlapping the other one. That just makes it feel more natural, I find. Rotate that a little bit, and there we go. So that is a wire asset that we now have. You can go in and do this as many times as you want and just repeat that a ton if you want and just make it crazy. So like you could just have tons and tons of hanging wires and make it super complicated if you want. Once I have something that I'm happy with, what I'll do is actually just select all these together. I can duplicate it out just in case I want to make changes or variations to this one, but I'm going to just select all these, right click, and then convert to, and I'm going to choose mesh. So now they're just a regular mesh like any other object. And then you can just Control J to join it together. The origin point is down there, so you might want to set the origin to geometry. And then for the material, I'll just pull up a shader editor. What you can do is just make it black. It really doesn't have to be much more complicated than that. So that's usually a good enough shader for it. If you want, you can maybe bring in a roughness map if it's going to be really a prominent part of the scene. So what I might do for that, just really quick, is go to the asset browser. I'm going to go to the Polyhaven add-on. These are all free textures that you can just get from their website though. And then I'll just find like some random metal texture or something. I'll just add some sort of mesh to put this on for now. So just cube, find a metal or like a rust texture. Any random texture, doesn't matter. Just drop it on here as long as it has some sort of roughness map. I could just take the roughness here, right click, copy. We could just go back to the wire, and then I'll just Control V to paste that roughness map over here. And then you can just plug that right into the roughness, apply scale, unwrap it with a cube projection. On the UV editor, we can just scale that up, and then now we have at least some sort of roughness map. It's not really showing up here, but in a render, you might actually see that if there's like some really bright highlights or something, and that'll give it enough detail to be used in most scenes. So what I would do at this point is probably just go in and make a few variations of this. The way you might use this, say we're just going to go into render view here. Let's just set up a really basic example here. I'm not going to go too crazy, but just let's take the background out. Let's turn the floor off here just so it's easier to see. And then let's just add a light, maybe a area light to start. Just turn up strength, turn up the exposure. Let's add a ground plane here. Maybe I'll just select the same material that's on here and just put it on this. It's a bit weird to be using this green material, but it's all right. Let's just bring this down a bit. And then maybe this can go up. Maybe rotate this 45 degrees, kind of like this way. And then we could just take this wire asset, it's a mesh now, and we can just duplicate this a ton of times. So these are pretty flexible. The way I like to work with these is scaling them down on their local x-axis. So if they're rotated all weird, when you hit S, X, it's gonna just shrink it this weird way. If you instead hit S, X, and then X one more time, so it's scaling relative to how it's rotated. So we could just duplicate this a ton of times, bring this in here, rotate it around in different orientations. If you do want to be able to spin it around the center, you could just have the cursor here. So I'll just hit Shift S, cursor to selected, that'll put it there. Switch the pivot point to the 3D cursor, and then you could just select these and rotate them around the center like that. So that's a really helpful way to just be able to quickly get this kind of covered in wires like this. So then we can duplicate these. If you found that you made them too thin or too thick, you can actually just go to edit mode on these and hit Alt S and then just hold Shift to slow it down. And you can actually just shrink it down like this. And then all of a sudden they're all thinner now. Let's just throw in some volume, display as bounds, new material, volume scatter, 0.01. And then yeah, on this guy, maybe just bring this up, or maybe we can scale it down this way. Maybe make this a little bit like of a more interesting color. And yeah, you can see how you might want to use this. And you can really duplicate this just a ton of different times, and it is pretty easy to make it just work by just stretching it like this. And that kind of gives you enough variation to where you're not really going to notice it being repeated too much. Obviously here I only used one of them, so you can kind of tell. But if you just make 2 or 3 of them and then rotate them enough different times, it's pretty easy to get away with doing that. Let's go to the next example here, which is making pipes. So I'm just going to take a floor plane. Let me add a surface to just work off of vertically as well. So I'll just have a pillar here or something. And let's say I want to have a pipe coming down kind of like this. So what I might do is add a cylinder. So Shift A, mesh, we'll just do cylinder. Let's maybe do 32 is probably fine actually. We don't want too much resolution, but we also don't want too little. I'm gonna put that right there. Let's S Shift Z to scale it on everything except the Z axis. So that's just the X and Y. Bring it down like that. I'll move this slightly closer in here. And then I want to position the height of this a little bit higher up. So I'll just G, Z, just move that up to there. And then I want this, let me just isolate this really quick with the slash key. I want this to spin or just get angled, kind of like going this way into this wall here. The easiest way to do that I found is just by using the spin tool. So if you just go into edit mode, the spin tool is right down here. And the way this works is you have to put the cursor down where you want it to rotate around. So in that case, you can just shift right click to move the cursor. I'll just put it right here. So now you'll notice with the spin tool, we get this gizmo thing here. If you don't see that, you have to turn on this show gizmo button up here. It's the bow and arrow looking button. That'll give you this here. The way this works is you just have to choose the right axis that you want to spin around. So right now it's spinning this way. That's not what we want. We want it to go the other way. So just click around with X, Y, and Z until you find the one that's just following the right path you want. So in this case, that's doing what I want. I'm gonna move this over a little bit until this circle is kind of like roughly in the middle of this thing, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Then you just hit one of these handles here, the plus, just click and drag, and then just move it along. I'm gonna just go, you can actually look at the number down here if you can't see it. I'm just gonna go until it reaches 90 degrees, or negative 90 in this case, and let go. So now, if it ends up being all weird and like looking like this, you just have to use the arrows that it already comes with here and just reposition this left and right and up and down, and you'll find the spot where it just naturally looks like it is doing the right thing. So that's good there. You can just accept that, get out of edit mode, or just go back to the select box over here. I might move this out a little bit, so just GY. And then I might just, with that face selected there, I might just extrude that until it reaches a point over here. Okay, and then I can just move this in a little bit. What I might do at this point is select this here, and then there's a shortcut you might want to know, which is Alt-E, which brings up this menu, and we can choose Extrude Faces Along Normals. So the normal is just the direction that the face is facing. So this will extrude each face along the way that it's facing is what that's doing. So Alt-E, Extrude Faces Along Normals, and we can just pull it out like this. The reason it's doing this weird thing, I'll just undo that, is because we don't have the scale applied. So we just hit Control A in object mode, apply scale, and now if we go back, Alt-E, Extrude Faces Along Normals, now it'll just do it properly with even scaling. Okay, so I'll just bring that up to like there. That's good enough for now. Alt-S is another way to just do that. Alt-S will just scale, doing the same direction, but instead of extruding, it's scaling. So Alt-S, bring that in. Let's maybe add a few more of those. So let's just add one here and here. I'll just do an Alt-E, Extrude Face Along Normals. Doesn't need to be too crazy. And maybe one of those in the middle here, and then one at the bottom as well. So I'll just take these, Alt-E, Extrude Face Along Normals, bring that out. Maybe this one at the bottom, I can Alt-S, bring that out a little bit. One thing you can do here if you want to just quickly add a bunch of detail to this is I'll just put the cursor on this line here on this edge, and I'll just add another cylinder. So I'll just cylinder, let's just do 8. So just really low poly, just like a bolt kind of thing. Shrink that way down. Okay, so what we can do is just, let's actually just select this row of edges, or row of faces rather, down here. Hit Shift S and then cursor to selected. That'll put the cursor directly in the middle of that circle. Then we can use the transform pivot point. We can switch that to 3D cursor right here. And then that means anything you do will rotate around the 3D cursor. So if I like rotate this or scale it, it'll just do it from wherever the cursor is. So you can see it's rotating from just wherever I put that, just because I have that 3D cursor with the transform pivot point there. So I'll just edit mode, put it back here. What we can do is just Shift D, rotate, hold Control to snap it. Let's just do like, I don't know, 45-degree increments. And then if you just do that in one action, so that was Shift D, don't click, R, and then just hold Control to snap. I'll just do 45 again. You can actually just repeat that same action since you did it all in one without clicking by hitting Shift R. So Shift R will just repeat that, and we can just do that all the way around. Okay, so that's just a nice little extra detail to have on there. Let's just join them together to one object, and I'll just move it down. Okay, and then I could just repeat those on some of those other ones here if I want. So Alt-D, just move that up. Maybe I can scale this down a little bit. Let's just do it from the median point this time. Alt-D, and we could just use that on all these here. So we'll just do that there. This one is a little bit thinner, so we'll just pull that out a bit. And then we could just duplicate and then just line that up just like that. So extremely simple, but effective. If you just right click and hit Shade Auto Smooth, that'll just add this and shade it smooth where it needs to be. We can also add a bevel modifier under this one and just lower that down, have it in there a little bit like that. And now we have this nice little pipe thing. I might actually just go in here and move these up a little bit just so it's a little bit closer to what the other one is. So that's more detail than I normally add to this. You can also go crazy and like, I'll just show you a really quick example here. If I add another cylinder, let's maybe do this one this direction this time. And I'll just quickly run through this again just to show you. So if I go into top view, I'll just select this face here. Let's take the spin tool again, find the right axis. So Z in this case, cursor down, pull this out, extrude, cursor down here, rotate, extrude. Maybe let's do another part of this. So we'll just do another one there. Just select that front face there. I think I have to just do that. And then I think then we can do like a slight angle, maybe extrude that out. Maybe just kind of have it doing that. Let's just move this one a little bit more out of the way. And then another one here. Use these arrows to reposition it into the spot we want. And then extrude SY0 to just flatten that. And then this one down here, we could just move this back. And then maybe this could wrap around again. So we'll just do cursor down, move this out, and then just extrude that again. Same thing here. Just move it, cursor, rotate, extrude a little bit. Maybe another one down here, extrude, use the arrows, extrude, and you get the idea, SX0 on the end there. And that's another way that you can just make much more intricate structures. You can have them folding over top of each other too by using the spin tool that way, or just duplicating the mesh over itself, that kind of thing. So I've actually gone and done that a bunch of times and made it into a pack of these. If you want to just download this free pack of pipes that I've already made using the same technique, there's a link in the description to that. But you can see how you can just use this technique to just go crazy with it if you want. It's the same exact method I was just showing, just kind of a little bit more intricate. Here's a bonus tip too. For really small, tiny little pipes, you can do this method here. I'm going to add any mesh. I'll just do a cube. Go into edit mode and then just select all the geometry. Press M to merge at center. And that'll merge all vertices into one single point. You just have to go into vertex select, and then that'll be able to, it's really hard to see, but there's a dot in the middle there. You'll be able to just go in and actually extrude this around now. So I can hit E, Y, and just extrude this little point into the kind of path that I want this little pipe or wire to follow. So I'll just extrude a little thing like this. We can just kind of make it wrap around something or go wherever we want. Don't worry about corners yet. Maybe I'll just go this way, up this way, just to kind of show you. Okay, right, so something like that. Let's maybe take the two end points, and I'll just, first of all, move this up a little bit off the ground. Then in edit mode, the two end points, I'll just extrude that downwards a little bit like that. Okay, I'm gonna go into all the corners that I want to be angled. So like this one, this, actually all of these, the entire thing. And then I could just hit Control. If you hit Control B to bevel, it won't do anything. But if you do hit Control Shift B, then it will bevel the corners. Okay, so we can do that. Scroll up to increase the number of segments. We could just do that many. And you don't want it to have overlapping parts, so just go before it touches anything else in the corners. So right around there. Now we have all these curves. You can right click this and then convert to curve. And then we can use the same technique as before with the wires by just turning up the bevel depth. So just increase that a little bit. You can just duplicate this a bunch of times if you want. So maybe I'll just Shift D, move this over a little bit, move some of these a little bit out of the way. This is a little bit problematic here. Let's just get that out of the way there. And there we go, right? Now we have another one. You can just customize this however you want. You don't have to make it exactly the same. Once you're happy with that, right click, convert back to mesh. And now these are just a normal mesh like before. So you can just shade smooth, put a rust texture on it. Let's just go into, I'll just set up a little basic scene here again. So we'll just take some of those lights from before, duplicate that over here. And then let's just put a rust texture on these. So shader editor, I think there's that green rust. We'll just take that, put it on here. Link material. You can unwrap these properly with like adding seams and stuff, but they're so tiny that you can probably just apply scale and then unwrap them with a cube projection. And that's probably going to be good enough. Probably should have applied scale on both of them. This, honestly, I would probably cube project. Again, if you want to do that the proper way, you can add seams on like the edges here. Let me just go to object mode. You would add like, I'll just quickly do this. Select edges on the back. So this back side there. And then that middle one is just the seam all the way down the back. You just U mark seam. And then U, and I would just use either angle based or conformal. Just use angle based this time. Let's just check it out. I'll just go, actually can isolate this and go to material preview. And then we have a properly unwrapped pipe. But to be honest, cube projection is probably fine. And then same with these, you can just duplicate these as many times as you want. They're really nice for adding just little details onto otherwise kind of plain surfaces. Just makes things feel a lot more industrial and nice to look at. So I love those. And then you can add like frameworks onto all these. Like it's really easy to just go in, model some little thing like this, and then have it like attaching to the wall somehow. You can really just kind of do anything with these, and it'll probably look like it makes sense. So you could just do that. I'm just literally adding cubes. on like certain spaces here, you know, add a couple of those here and there. So you can see it really doesn't need to be that complicated with the little details. You can just kind of make it work and then it'll look nice. Okay, let's go to the next one. I'm also going to switch this material because I do not like this. There we go. They weren't loading before, but now they're in here. So let me just swap this one for this rusty metal. This one's way better. Maybe these lights can be also a different color. I just don't really like how those look either. Okay, for the last one here, let's do some railings. This is going to be kind of similar to the pipes, but I'll show you some tricks to get this to work a bit more well with like small handrails. So if you just add mesh, cylinder, you can probably drop this a little bit lower, between 16 to 32, somewhere in there is going to be fine. You don't need this to be super high poly. So I'll just do like that. You'll probably want to use a scale reference for this. When you're actually making it, it doesn't really matter, but when you're sizing it for the final result, you'll probably want to use like a human model reference scale, or just add a cube that you know is 2 meters tall, just so you can judge the scale of this overall. Okay, so we can get this here. Okay, let's put the cursor down here, edit mode, grab the top face. You have to be in X-ray mode to grab that, but right there. Let's just take the spin tool again, find the right axis, and then just rotate this around like this. We can probably make this a little bit more of a large curve, extrude, and then that's probably it. I can probably just add a mirror modifier from here. So I'm gonna just add that onto here, mirror modifier, and then in edit mode, we can just kind of move this over this way, turn on clipping so that we can just slam it together, and then now it's joined in the middle. Be careful that you have to delete this inner face here, just delete that so it's actually an empty hollow tube. Otherwise there'll be a face in the way, so just delete that one. Once we have this, we can keep it pretty simple. You could do some more advanced connection with modeling this properly, and I just don't like bothering with that. I'm gonna duplicate this and just do that, and that's good enough for me. Very simple, very low poly, super quick to make. Yeah, if you're doing an up close shot, you don't want to do this method probably, but for 99% of the time, this is going to work really well. I'll just shrink this down a little bit. We can do like 3 of these, like if we want to do, you know, more of this style or whatever, we can do that. But yeah, that's totally fine. If you accidentally make this too thick as well, you can just grab any one of these faces on this section, hit Control L to select any linked geometry, and then just hit Alt S, and that'll also shrink it down like this. I think we just have to apply scale first, and then Alt S should work a little bit more properly. There we go. So that's good there. So this is an asset that you can just so easily duplicate around the entire scene. It adds so much detail to, like, it's great for making walkways or just platforms or whatever. It's a railing like this, you're not gonna know that it's just, it looks fine to be duplicated, you know what I mean? So it's a very useful thing to have when you're making it, like any kind of industrial or sci-fi render. Just really nice to have these. Let's do a different color on this one. Let's do like red or something. Maybe with these, I might just go in and delete this bottom one. I should have pressed Alt D on all these, but I might just take all these and then hit Control L to link object data onto this one. And then we can just take this thing and move it down a little bit. Let's Alt S the entire thing as well, just to thin everything out a bit. And yeah, that's pretty nice. Let me show you how to make some stairs really quick. In Blender 5.0, we get this new array modifier. So we can just move it out this way, move it down, and then just do this. So this modifier is pretty nice to have. We'll just put that there, hold shift if you want to just get it more accurate. Maybe we can move this in a little bit as well. And then say we want a handrail going all the way down here. What I would do is start with the same one up here. Maybe we can just take the mirror off. Let's just work with this here. So we'll take this. I'm going to extrude this and just move it down here. And then I'm just going to take all this here, and I'll actually I'll duplicate this around, and I'll flip it by -1, and then we'll just connect it up down here. So let's just put this roughly lined up. We can take these vertices here, and then G, I can actually just hit B to go into snap mode, grab the bottom one, and just snap it to this down here. Then we can just do a merge by distance. So we'll just take these, merge by distance. That'll remove all those there. So there should be no overlapping vertices, and they're all just connected properly. Now we have a problem that this is not really great, because this railing here is going to be thicker than this one here. That's where we can actually just use either rotate it manually or use the shear tool. So the shear tool is down here. And what we can do is, we might have to do this one at a time, but we can just go this, shear till it looks like the same length. Same thing here. Pull that out till it looks like the same length, or the same width rather, on both of these pipes. Same here, just quickly shear it. It's kind of a janky solution to do it one at a time, but it works. And then there we go. We can also just take these here and we can just bevel that. So Control B, first of all, let's apply scale. Let's also make sure we just merge by distance and just increase that a little bit. Maybe the normals are flipped. Okay, so they are flipped. So we just have to go to edit mode, hit Shift N to recalculate normals. That should fix it. Oh, I didn't duplicate that properly either. Whoops. Control B, and we'll do that at the top as well. And then we can just kind of duplicate these as needed. And that's probably how I would do that. Okay, so there's an example of 3 pretty essential models that I use in a ton of different environments: wires, pipes, railings, and variations of those. So I'd recommend you try making these and then add them to Blender's asset library so that you can pull them into any future project you're working on. So I would encourage you to try these out and try and customize them to something that's a bit more unique and make it fit around different models in your scene and just make it what you want. If you found this helpful, you might want to go and check out the Cyber Environments course linked below. When I first started Blender, I really struggled with this kind of stuff, wires, pipes, buildings, streets, and city renders. So that's basically the ultimate guide that I wish I had when I was first starting out when it comes to making cities and industrial stuff and cyberpunk renders and basically stuff like you've seen in this video, just with full complete environments. So there's tons of guides, full step-by-step guides and asset packs and a ton of stuff in there. So I'll leave a link below to that if you want to check that out. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in some other video.